If you've been diving into Abiotic Factor, you already know this game isn't your typical survival crafting experience. Instead of braving the wilderness, you're stuck inside a bizarre, monster-infested office building, where staplers might be deadlier than the creatures outside. While you're gathering supplies and trying not to starve, one of the most important parts of survival is, of course, food. And in this game, food isn't just about keeping your hunger and thirst meters in check. It also gives you some seriously useful buffs that can make your life a whole lot easier. Today, we're talking about the best foods to cook in Abiotic Factor. Some of these recipes will give you extra XP, others will slow down how fast your needs drain, and a few even boost your carrying capacity. Depending on your playstyle, there's definitely a recipe that's going to make your survival grind smoother. Whether you're frying, simmering up soups at cooking level 3, or unlocking fancy baked dishes once you hit level 10, knowing which foods are worth your time can be the difference between thriving and barely scraping by. I'm quickly moving on to the video. Before we start, if you enjoy these types of list videos, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. Enjoy watching! Sustenance soup might not sound all that exciting at first glance, but in Abiotic Factor, this dish has a very special place on the menu. You will not be able to cook it until the later stages of the game, since it requires a military meal ready to eat that can only be looted from soldier-type enemies. The recipe itself could not be any simpler. Just toss a military meal ready to eat into a pot of water, cook it in a soup pot, and you are done. The downside is that it only restores 20 hunger and 20 thirst, which is honestly pretty low compared to other foods you might have access to by then. So why bother with such a weak recipe? The real reason is the secondary buff called Quick Reflexes, and this is where things get interesting. Unlike most buffs in the game, Quick Reflexes is tough to get your hands on. However, once you do, it makes a big difference for players who love using ranged weapons. This buff gives you a 10% boost in reloading and accuracy experience points, and that tiny edge adds up fast when you are grinding towards some of the game's top-tier firearms. That is why sustenance soup earns a spot on the list of the best foods to cook. Even if the hunger and thirst restoration is underwhelming, the buff it provides makes it worth the effort. Any player who wants to maximize their effectiveness in combat, especially with ranged weapons, should keep an eye out for military meal ready-to-eats and save them for this recipe. It is one of those hidden gems in Abiotic Factor that reminds you, sometimes the stats on paper do not tell the whole story. Sweet porridge is one of the more unusual recipes you can whip up in Abiotic Factor. It is made from antiverse wheat, melted ice cream, and a pot of water, cooked together in a soup pot. Stat-wise, it restores 23 hunger and 32 thirst, which is decent but not game-changing. Still, what makes this recipe stand out has nothing to do with the basic numbers. It is all about the bonus you get after eating it. The buff you unlock is called Sweet Tooth, and while it does not improve your skills directly, it can make a big difference in how you manage your food supply. With Sweet Tooth active, vending machine snacks like chips become 25% more effective, and the hunger restoration from all sweets jumps up by 50 points. That means those random candy bars and snacks you have been hoarding suddenly become way more valuable. This makes sweet porridge an excellent backup plan for when your resources are running low. Instead of relying solely on heavy meals or cooked recipes, you can lean on vending machines and scavenge sweets to keep your hunger in check. It is not the strongest recipe in the game, but it is one of those clever little tricks that make survival easier, and it is definitely worth remembering the next time you stumble across some melted ice cream. Cooked egg and peccary tartine is a lifesaver for those moments when your hunger bar is scraping the bottom. Unlike some of the more niche foods that only make the list because of their buffs, this one is all about raw survival. With a massive 98.75 hunger restored in a single serving, it is one of the best meals you can cook if you are desperate to refill your stomach. On top of that, it restores 38.75 thirst, which makes it a fairly well-rounded option when you are running on empty. The catch is that this recipe is not exactly beginner-friendly. To make it, you will need a powered convection oven along with 4 specific ingredients: a raw egg, a super tomato, bread, and raw peccary sausages. These ingredients are not always easy to come by, and putting them together often means you already have some kind of farming setup in place. It is not the kind of thing you can throw together on the fly in the early game. But when you do have the resources, cooked egg and peccary tartine absolutely pays off. Its high hunger value means fewer meals overall, which saves you both time and ingredients in the long run. Think of it as one of those big, hearty meals you cook when you are stocked up and ready to go. Perfect for keeping your character full during long stretches of exploration or heavy combat. It is not flashy, but it is reliable. And sometimes that is exactly what you need. Meaty stew is the kind of recipe you want to have ready when you know a big fight is coming up. On its own, it restores 62 hunger and 20 thirst, which is solid enough, but the real value comes from the heightened senses buff. This bonus speeds up the experience point gain for both blunt and sharp melee weapons by 10%. Since almost every player relies on weapons from at least one of these categories, this buff quickly becomes one of the most practical in the game. The benefit goes beyond just hitting harder in the moment. By leveling up your melee weapon skills faster, you unlock access to stronger gear sooner. That means more damage, better survivability, and an easier time overall pushing through tougher areas of the game. In the early stages especially, boosting this skill growth gives you a noticeable edge, making Meaty Stew one of those rare recipes that can genuinely change the pace of your progression. As for the recipe itself, it is appropriately meat-heavy. You will need a raw peccary chop, a raw alien drumstick, a raw alien rump, and of course, a pot of water to bring it all together in a soup pot. It takes some effort to collect all these ingredients, but the payoff is absolutely worth it. Think of Meaty Stew as your pre-battle meal. Hearty, filling, and packed with a buff that will keep your melee skills climbing while you are swinging away. Grayeb Chowder is one of those recipes that feels tailor-made for team play and Abiotic Factor. On the surface, it restores 32 hunger and a hefty 63 thirst, making it a strong choice for hydration. But what really makes this chowder stand out is the buff it grants, Desire of the Flesh. This effect increases your damage resistance, which sounds amazing, until you realize it also makes you more likely to attract attention from hostile aliens like the Layak. That trade-off means this soup is not for everyone. If you are playing a fragile, stealth-focused character, eating Grayeb Chowder before heading into a dangerous area could actually get you killed. On the flip side, if you are the party's tank or frontline fighter, this buff is practically perfect. Drawing aggro away from your teammates while enjoying bonus damage resistance makes you far more effective in your role, turning you into a reliable wall between your allies and the threats around them. To cook Grayeb Chowder, you will need a handful of farmable ingredients, Grayeb and potatoes, along with a milk sack from a peccary sow and the ever-present pot of water. Toss it all together in a soup pot, and you have a meal that is as situational as it is powerful. In the right hands, it can be a game changer. In the wrong hands, though, it is basically a dinner bell for every alien in the area. Arm and a leg. Mega Stew, often shortened to A&L Mega Stew, is one of the more straightforward yet powerful recipes in Abiotic Factor. To make it, you will need an Exor arm, a raw alien drumstick, a raw Exor heart, and of course, a pot of water. What makes this stew particularly appealing is that none of the ingredients need to be farmed. You can gather everything through combat. For players who dislike farming or simply want a break from tending crops, this recipe is a perfect fit. On the stat side, A&L Mega Stew is no slouch. It restores 74 hunger and 24 thirst, making it hearty enough to serve as a main food source all on its own. You can easily keep your character sustained with just this dish, which makes it incredibly convenient for longer expeditions or combat-heavy runs where farming and cooking variety take a backseat to survival and efficiency. But the real kicker here is the Mega Anti-buff. Once consumed, it grants a big movement speed boost while also giving 2 strength experience points. That combination is a dream for melee-focused players, since it not only makes combat more fluid and aggressive, but also accelerates your growth into stronger weapons and abilities. Pair that with how easy it is to farm the alien-based ingredients, and A&L Mega Stew becomes one of the most practical powerhouse recipes in the entire game. Balanced stew is exactly what it sounds like. A recipe that gives you a little bit of everything without leaning too hard in one direction. Stat-wise, it restores 22 hunger and 21 thirst, which is not all that impressive compared to some of the heavier meals in the game. But the real value lies in how easy it is to make and the unique buff it provides. With just a raw carbuncle, a carbuncle mushroom, some salt, and a pot of water, you can put this stew together fairly early on without taking too many risks. What makes balanced stew shine is its buff, Big Brain. This effect boosts all experience point gains by 15%, regardless of the activity. Whether you are fighting, crafting, scavenging, or farming, everything you do will level you up faster while this buff is active. It is one of the most versatile bonuses in Abiotic Factor, and it encourages a more refined playstyle where every action contributes a little more to your overall progression. The only catch is that carbuncles can be a little rare, which means you might not always have the ingredients handy. Still, when you do manage to gather the materials, balanced stew is absolutely worth cooking. It may not fill your hunger bar to the brim, but the buff it provides can accelerate your growth in a way that few other recipes can match, making it an excellent choice for players who want steady progress across the board. Veggie stew is one of those recipes that really rewards players who commit to farming in Abiotic Factor. On its own, it restores 45 hunger and 43 thirst, which already makes it a solid and reliable meal. But the real prize here is the living off the land buff. This effect increases your farming experience points by 10%, which might not sound huge at first, but it adds up quickly when you are tending multiple plots and cycling through crops. The best way to use veggie stew is strategically. Eat it right before you harvest and replant. That way, you maximize the bonus farming experience points while doing the activities that matter most for leveling up your skill. Since farming unlocks new seeds and improves yields over time, stacking this buff consistently can really accelerate your growth. For players who want to become self-sufficient and rely less on scavenging, this recipe is a must-have. To cook veggie stew, you will only need farming ingredients: a super tomato, a potato, 1 antiverse wheat, and a pot of water. Nothing needs to be hunted down or looted from enemies, but you will need to unlock certain seeds later in the game to have consistent access. Once you do, however, veggie stew becomes the perfect cycle booster, a dish that feeds you well and makes your crops work even harder for you. The human brain is easily the most controversial food item in Abiotic Factor, and calling it food at all feels a little off. Unlike other recipes, you do not cook it in a pot or oven. You salvage it from human skulls at the repair table. Once you have it, you can eat it straight away, no preparation required. From a gameplay perspective, it is quick and convenient. From a moral perspective, well, that is another story. Eating a human brain does not actually restore any hunger or thirst, which makes sense, but it does provide 2 powerful status effects. The first is the Brain Drain buff, and this is where things get interesting. Brain Drain increases all experience point gains by 15%, which is the single highest experience boost available in the entire game. For players looking to grind out levels, recipes, or skills, that bonus is incredibly hard to ignore. Of course, there is a cost. Eating a human brain also inflicts the sick debuff. Your character will vomit, lose some maximum health temporarily, and even risk spreading sickness to other players nearby. It is a classic high-risk, high-reward scenario, fantastic if you are chasing fast progression, but potentially disastrous if you are already in a dangerous situation. In short, the human brain is both ethically questionable and mechanically glorious, exactly as its name suggests. Hearty stew earns its spot at the very top of the food chain in Abiotic Factor, and for good reason. On the surface, it provides a solid 52 hunger and 46 thirst, which already makes it a dependable meal. But what really sets it apart is the fact that it gives you not 1 but 2 powerful buffs when eaten. The first, Super Satisfied, slows down the rate at which hunger and thirst drain, letting you stretch your resources much further. The second, Bodacious, increases your carrying capacity by 25% without any penalty, which is a huge quality of life boost for any loot-heavy run. These buffs work hand in hand to make hearty stew ideal for exploration and scavenging. With Super Satisfied active, you will not need to constantly stop and eat. And with Bodacious, you can haul back far more materials than usual. For players who love combing through every room, stocking up on crafting supplies, or just bringing home everything that is not nailed down, this recipe is basically a dream come true. It is rare for a single meal to impact both survival and inventory management so directly, which is why Hearty Stew stands out so strongly. The best part is that the ingredients are not overly rare or difficult to obtain. To cook it, you will need 1 raw Exor heart, a carbuncle mushroom, a super tomato, and a pot of water. The raw Exor heart and carbuncle mushroom drop from common enemies like Exors, Exor monks, and the shroom variants of peccary and carbuncle, while the super tomato can be farmed once unlocked in the mid-game. With ingredients this accessible and buffs this powerful, Hearty Stew is easily one of the most reliable and rewarding recipes you can add to your cooking rotation. The video ends here. See you in another video. Don't forget to subscribe.